Ladies and gentlemen, we ask your indulgence. We don't have enough chairs for everyone. So if you're under 30 years of age, would you please let us old guys sit down? Thank you. All rise. Color guard. Present colors. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Bugler, play taps. Color guard, retire colors. You may be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Captain Alex Kaish Maritime, your host for today's services. Representative Abigail Spanberger was unable to attend today's ceremony, and to assure us of her support for our mission of educating about and remembering the Holocaust, she sent Ms. Christy Black, the district director. Ms. Black, would you make yourself known? Ms. Black's right over there. Thank you, Ms. Black. Welcome all to Emek Sholom, our Valley of Peace. We have a twofold mission at this oldest Holocaust memorial site in North America: to teach about the Holocaust and to remember our murdered families who perished in Europe for their faith. Sadly, nearly 1/3 of all Americans and 4 out of 10 millennials do not know which war the Holocaust is associated with. And so it is that we gather here each November on the Sunday nearest the anniversary of Kristallnacht. Kristallnacht is when Joseph Goebbels' propaganda drums whipped up the German people and hit a crescendo, igniting a riot in the dreaded night of November 9th, and into the wee hours it would continue in the morning of November 10th. This propaganda-induced riot of hate, destruction, and death, targeting all Jews, gave Hitler the support he needed to proceed with his demonic plans of world domination, and for the annihilation of Untermenschen, lebenswertes Leben, life not worthy of living. The final act of this play of horrors was the greatest mass murder in the history of our planet, resulting in the death of 11 million human souls, 6 million of whom were Jews, and 1.5 million were Jewish Kinderla, babies, children. The world's innocents would also die with our babies. Holocaust survivor and co-founder of our beloved Virginia Holocaust Museum, Colonel J. Ibsen, called me one day last summer and asked if I had ever heard of the Daffodil Project. Like many of you might have done, I confessed my ignorance. The Daffodil Project aspires to build a worldwide living Holocaust memorial by planting 1.5 million daffodils. This is in memory of the 1.5 million Jewish children who perished in the Holocaust, and in support for children suffering in humanitarian crises the world over. Emek Sholom is now a part of that living memorial, and to date over 664,000 daffodils have been planted at 266 different locations the world over. Our wonderful gardener, Wes Sprouse, and his 2 young boys, Lyndon and Sebastian. Where are you, Lyndon? Where are you, Sebastian? There they are. They've already planted 150 of our 250 bulbs that are allotted to us. And you fine ladies and gentlemen will be given the honor of joining us in planting the next 100 at the end of our service today. We also invite the community leaders at the Virginia Holocaust Museum, the Community Federation of Greater Richmond, the Jewish Community Federation of Greater Richmond, and federations elsewhere, local rabbis, other leaders, spiritual and secular, to join us by committing yourselves to becoming a part of the Daffodil Project. Why? Because 836,000 bulbs have not been planted yet. Jay Ibsen's already ordered his first 250 because he's a leader in our community. Please help me welcome one of Richmond's finest, Rabbi David Asher of Knesset Beth Israel, of the oldest Orthodox synagogue in Richmond, Virginia.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. Thank you to Alex for inviting me to say a few words. This opportunity, while it's certainly one that's done with some solemnity, is an opportunity for me to be involved in this lifelong process of dealing with a unique kind of trauma. It's remembering my great-grandparents, my mother's family, so many of whom could not live out their lives. In particular, Kristallnacht itself plays a significant role in my life because my grandfather, my mother's father, just hours before Kristallnacht began and the pogrom across Europe began, he saw his family for the last time. He said goodbye, He didn't know what was going to be. He was fortunate that he and his two brothers escaped, but he never saw his parents, never got to say goodbye to the people in his family, to his household. In addition, while my grandfather, Arthur Yulo, was running for his life, my other grandfather was fighting for the Allies on my father's side. This juxtaposition, if you will, of having my father's father and my mother's father on opposite sides of the ocean, trying to achieve freedom in their own way, important for me to think about, to share with you publicly, as I think on Veterans Day of the veteran in my family, my father's father. But I have to ask a question this afternoon before we start our proceedings. Why do we have to deal with this? Why did my family have to run away from a home that they knew as their home for over 1,000 years? Why weren't they just as German as their non-Jewish German neighbors? Why did they have to scurry about trying to save their lives and their families as if they were hunted animals? Why did my great-grandfather put his life on the line to protect Germany in World War I, only to have his decorated honors be forgotten, be looked at as if it was nothing? My great-grandfather started a business that employed dozens and dozens of his neighbors in Aschaffenburg, Germany. He brought them financial well-being. He employed them, provided for their families, started a great company. It was as if he did nothing. And my family lives with that pain. Why did my great-grandmother have to send her husband, the father of her children, off to war if they weren't going to be seen as equals? People today want to know, when are we going to stop talking about anti-Semitism? These are not our questions. As Jews, these atrocities have been ongoing for thousands of years. We've been going from place to place to place. We're tired. We're tired of being looked at as different. We're tired of being looked at as being the other person. These are questions that society has to grapple with. They haven't had this memory going back thousands of years. They have to ask themselves, why less than 100 years after the Holocaust, my family, so many other families, is part of a living memory? Why do Jews have to be the most victimized religious minority in 21st century America by a large margin? Anti-Semitism is serious. If it happened before, that means it can happen again. I think about this trauma, this pain in my family. I'm so many generations, so many years, so many decades removed. Why does it affect me so much? I want to end on a positive. The answer to this question, why it affects me so much, is because the Jewish people have something to offer. We have something to give, to share with the world. There are some who don't want us to share it. But we reflect on that, and we realize that indeed, there's a recognition. We have a lot to contribute. Sure enough, without any question, we're going to contribute it. We're not going to be deterred. We're going to be motivated. We always have been. We always will be. And we look for friends, for allies, for neighbors to be a part of this effort, to understand our history, and to join us in the monumental task at hand. Thank you.
These memorial walls behind me are engraved with the names of 463 of our murdered loved ones. Every year, one or more of these victims is resuscitated and brought back to life by a family member who breathes life back into a name, reminding us that this martyr was of flesh and blood and that we hold his memory dear. Please welcome Emek Sholom co-president, attorney Lenora Cookie Soledar, as she introduces this year's family speaker.
Do I need to put this down?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. It is my pleasure today to introduce our family speaker, Dr. Ralph Navon. Ralph served in the United States Air Force and practiced dentistry in our community for 47 years. I have known Ralph since our teenage years, albeit not well. I remember thinking he was cute. Our lives have taken similar paths, probably similar to many of our peers. We both are children of immigrants. Both of our fathers died young, leaving widows to raise their children. Both families sacrificed in order that the children would be educated and successful. And both our parents are buried here at Emek Sholom Holocaust Memorial Cemetery. I say this as a tribute to all our parents who sacrificed in order for their kinder to succeed. On September 14th, 2020, I was retired, but happened to be in my old office when a telephone call came through from Dr. Bernard Levine from Toulouse, France. I knew no one from France, but took the call. Dr. Levine explained that his friend, Pierre Bilfeld, a local pharmacist, had been searching the internet and discovered Emek Sholom's Holocaust Memorial, which you see right before you. On the memorial were 4 names, all with the surname Verstandig. He wanted to know, could I tell him who in our community had placed those names on the memorial? Pierre was looking for family and survivors on his mother's side. His mother, Edith Verstandig, had survived Auschwitz. Thanks in no small part to my childhood friend, Melanie Berman Becker, today we welcome Ralph to tell us his family story.
Thank you so much for being here and sharing your story. Thank you, Cookie. Can everyone hear me? Do you still think I'm cute? Good afternoon. Thank you for the honor of asking me to speak today. In 1944, I was born in Palestine as Raphael Verstandig. In 1953, I came to the United States, and today I'm Ralph Navon. We're here to commemorate Kristallnacht. The Night of Broken Glass occurred in 1938 on November 9 and 10. These were the nights when the German Nazis attacked Jews and their properties. However, today, we're not only remembering the anniversary date of Kristallnacht, but we're also remembering the intervening years between 1933 and 1945 when the Nazi boycott of Jewish businesses began and the concentration camps were beginning to be liberated. During these years, 6 million Jews and 5 million others were persecuted and murdered. These victims died because of their ethnicity, religion, political beliefs, or sexual orientation. To say that these individuals died or perished is an understatement. These human beings were slaughtered, shot, mutilated, raped, tortured, gassed, and thrown into the fire of the crematoriums. Others perished from starvation or lack of medical care. So on this day and forevermore, we must remember and never forget. What I did not know. I did not know anything about my dad's past life when he was a child or a young adult. In our family, discussions about the past were never brought up. All I knew was that my dad, Herman Verstandig, lost his father and his 3 brothers to extermination in the Nazi death camps. Their names, Joseph, Marcus, Max, and Sigmund, are inscribed on the memorial wall behind me. When my parents, Ruth and Herman, my sister Joyce, and I came to the Emek Sholom cemetery to visit our family's grave sites as well as those of Holocaust survivors, our moods were somber. Ironically, I've always noticed the 2 metal smokestacks from the Forest Lawn crematory behind the memorial wall. It sadly reminds me of the gas chambers in the Nazi death camps. What I have learned. My grandfather, Opa Joseph, and my grandmother, Oma Sirka, had 4 sons. Again, Marcus, Max, my dad Herman, and Sigmund. However, Oma Sirka died after giving birth to her last child, Sigmund. Unable to care for his 4 sons, my Opa placed my dad along with his 3 brothers in a Jewish orphanage in Kassel, Germany. After leaving the orphanage in 1920, my dad lost touch with his brothers. And in 1935, he immigrated from Kassel, Germany to Palestine. He realized that there would no longer be the possibility of a good life for a Jew in Germany. In 1937, he married my mother, Ruth Behrman, of Essen, Germany, and they established a home and a jewelry business in Haifa. During the years of 1937 to 1939, my aunt Razie Berman emigrated to Quito, Ecuador, while my grandparents, Herman and Rosa Behrman, and my aunt Hilda and my uncle Eric Blumenthal emigrated to England. My aunt Hilda and Uncle Eric found employment working for a wealthy English household. If you have watched the British TV series of Downton Abbey on PBS, then you're familiar with Mr. Carson and Ms. Hughes. My Uncle Eric was the head butler, and my Aunt Hilda was the housekeeper. On November 7, 1938, Herschel Greenspan, a 17-year-old Polish Jew, mortally wounded the German ambassador in Paris. This incident was the spark that ignited Kristallnacht and the total destruction of Jewish life as it once was. It uprooted, separated, and dispersed families to parts unknown. My Opa Joseph and his new wife Hedwig and their children Leo and Erna fled to Amsterdam. They were eventually rounded up in 1942. Deported by train to Auschwitz, and were murdered in the gas chambers. Of the sons from Joseph's first marriage, Marcus, his wife Herta, and their daughter Ruth were also deported to Auschwitz, where they were killed upon their arrival. Max was deported and died in Buchenwald, and Sigmund was deported and killed in Sobibor. All totaled, my dad lost 9 members of his immediate family. In addition to my dad's loss, my mom's sister, my Aunt Razie, lost her husband and son David in Auschwitz. I cannot imagine the sadness that my dad and my Aunt Razie experienced throughout their lifetimes. In the late 1940s, a group of immigrants and survivors of the Holocaust formed a club in Richmond which was known as the New American Jewish Club of Richmond. The club held meetings and planned social events for its members. It was a close-knit
group that shared much in common. The many untold stories, the stories of hardships, the stories of loss and survivorship, and the stories of heroism. In 1955, after having established the Emek Sholom Cemetery, the New American Jewish Club, of which my parents were members, had a memorial wall constructed and then dedicated to the 200 individuals of the family members who had perished in the Holocaust. The original wall consisted of 2 panels and a central stone. The memorial today consists of four panels to memorialize 453 victims, and the cemetery is now known as the Emek Sholom Holocaust Memorial Cemetery. What I now know. As sad as it is to share what I did not know and what I have learned about my dad's family and their fate, what I now know is an amazing discovery thanks to the internet. It is the story of one individual's relentless pursuit in the hopes of finding any surviving members of his family. Throughout our lives, my sister Joyce and I thought that we were the only surviving members of the Verstandig family. On Thursday, September 17, 2020, I received a phone call from a very excited Cookie Soledar. She had received an email through an intermediary who was helping Pierre Bilfeld of Toulouse, France, find any possible Verstandig relatives. Pierre's mother, Edith Verstandig, who survived Auschwitz, was my dad's niece, and Joyce's and my first cousin. Her father, Max, and my dad were brothers. Cookie also told me that she had spoken with Melanie Becker and had asked her if she knew of any Verstandigs in Richmond. Melanie mentioned that my sister Joyce Fratkin and I, Ralph Navon, were once Verstandigs. As I mentioned earlier, my family emigrated to the United States in 1953 with our German surname of Verstandig. When we became American citizens in 1959, my parents wanted to Americanize our name. So we changed our name from Verstandig, which in German means understanding, to Navon, which in Hebrew is similar to understanding or wise. Now back to the rest of the story. Our second cousin Pierre Bilfeld and his son Norman had been invited by the city of Kassel, Germany, to unveil a Stolperstein in memory of Edith's father Max and her Opa Joseph Verstandig. Stolperstein is a concrete cube bearing a brass plate inscribed with the name and life dates of victims of the Nazi persecution and extermination. This cube is set in concrete at the last known residence of the Holocaust victim. During this trip, Pierre discovered that his grandfather Max had 3 brothers, Marcus, Herman, and Sigmund, and of the 3 brothers, Herman was the only surviving uncle of his mother Edith. Somehow, Cousin Pierre's Google search for Verstandig relatives led him to the Emek Sholom website, where he happened to notice the 4 Verstandig names inscribed on the memorial wall. My sister Joyce and I made contact with our cousin Pierre through the email address which Cookie had given to us. After several email exchanges, we decided it was time to have a conversation. So on Saturday, September 26, 2020, we scheduled a Zoom meeting to meet the Bilfeld family. In attendance from the Verstandig Navon side were my sister Joyce, her husband Melvin, my wife Alicia, and me. The Bilfeld side included Pierre, his wife Elizabeth, their daughter Eva, and their son Norman. We had a very warm and rewarding conversation, with Eva serving as our interpreter, as the Bilfelds did not speak English. We immediately felt like family. Our conversation, which lasted over 2 hours, consisted of the usual getting to know you that happens when meeting someone new. Pierre's wife Elizabeth is a teacher, and Pierre and his son Norman are both pharmacists who all live and work in Toulouse. Their daughter Eva is in marketing and lives in New York. However, because of COVID, Eva was temporarily back in France. Last Sunday, I emailed Pierre to let him know that I will be sharing his story of discovering the Richmond Verstandigs. Pierre replied to me with, "Indeed, it is thanks to the monument erected by the European survivors of the Second World War in Richmond that I was able to find you. A big thank you to Cookie, too." More importantly, and in conclusion, through 5,000 years of bondage, persecution, and torment, from the days of the Egyptians through the days of the Holocaust, and even through today, the Jewish people have adapted, endured, and thrived. We are survivors. From the past to the present to the future, through religion or through ancestry, we're all connected in one way or another. Some of you may be here today because you have suffered a loss of a family member during the Holocaust, or maybe others are here to simply remember the tragic events of the past. For whatever reason, we will forever be connected to the families that we have lost and to the families that we have discovered. We will always persevere and have the determination to seek a better future. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. That was very profound. You notice he made reference to the two stacks, the smokestacks, for the crematoria here at the cemetery. Ephraim Rubinstein, a renowned painter, did a painting of our holy site, and he asked whether he should leave the smokestacks in, and of course we insisted that he do so because of the relationship with our people who were burnt in the Holocaust. Look at the stacks as you leave here because they won't be here much longer. They're destined to be demolished sometime in the near future. Each year we have an essay contest for high school students with a first place cash prize of $500 and a second place cash prize of $300. Why are these not scholarships? It's because kids need cash in their pocket to buy shoes, to buy a sandwich, and sometimes these things are overlooked. Here to explain the awards and to announce the winners are Holocaust survivor and fellow Emek Sholom board members Dr. Roger Loria and his daughter Rachel.
Yep, I'm gonna start. Good afternoon. My name is Rachel Loria, and I'm a second-generation Holocaust survivor, a board member of Emek Sholom Committee, and the chair of the Esther J. Windmuller Never Again Award Committee. Do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Dr. Roger Loria. I'm a Holocaust survivor and have similar stories as you heard from Dr. Navon.
Before we introduce our winner, we want to take a second to tell who Esther Windmuller was. Esther J. Windmuller is a blessed memory. She was a board member and a community activist. She was a lawyer in the Richmond community and a beloved member of the community and of our Emek Sholom board. In 2017, Esther passed away, and due to her commitment to the Holocaust community and the Never Again Award, it was only appropriate to rename the award in her memory. Before we announce the winner, I'd like for all of the applicants from this year to please stand and be recognized. The Esther J. Windmuller Never Again Award runner-up this year is Ella Winterling, and our winner this year is Abigail Crow. introduce her and check them up.
Abby Crow is a junior at Freeman High School. Her interest in the Holocaust was kindled when she participated in New York Times Summer Academy last year. As part of her journalist class, she had the opportunity to interview a survivor. Abby is active in the youth group of her church, First Presbyterian, where she serves as a mentor to younger students. She also dances competitively as a member of the show troupe at the Regency Dance Academy.
Please join us in congratulating both winners and welcoming Abby Crow to do her essay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you all so much for the honor of speaking to you. Last summer, I was lucky enough to hear Alice Ginsberg recount her life story, and I wrote the piece that I'm about to read to you. As I've gone on this exploration of the Holocaust, the one aspect that has stood out to me the most is how much love the Holocaust survivors have for the world. One would think that after living through such a horrendous event in history, that it would be easy to stay bitter towards the oppressors. I have found that the motto, more love and less hate, is cemented in their minds and dictates how survivors live their lives. A few months ago, I was also fortunate enough to spend an afternoon with Helena Zim, who many of you may know. She immediately was willing to share her story with me and loved me like I was her own granddaughter. Mrs. Zim's warmth and empathy has inspired me to spread love around my communities and continue the fight against anti-Semitism. Thank you all so much. Oh, sorry. As a dark night in May 1944 unfolded, so did the reality of Alice Ginsberg and her family's fate. Barking German shepherds and yelling SS officials could be heard as they were swiftly rushed from cattle cars with thousands of others into Auschwitz concentration camp. Only weeks before, Ginsberg had lived an Orthodox Jewish life in Czechoslovakia with her mother, father, 3 sisters, and brother. Now, she was moments away from a separation that would break up her family and unravel her world. Alice Ginsberg recounted her emotional testimony to a group of students in hopes that her story will never be forgotten. I recognize how fortunate I am to have heard a first-person account as part of my journalism class. In recent months, anti-Semitism has once again been on the rise, and Ginsberg, along with her fellow Holocaust survivors, are pleading for more love and less hate. Alice, 13 years old when Czechoslovakia was invaded, had already been forced to leave school because of anti-Semitism and had watched her father sent away to work for Hungarian war efforts. However, she never saw the Nazi invasion coming. I don't know how much they, my parents, knew, she told us. At this time, the only war news that Alice's family heard were little snippets picked up at the synagogue. The Nazis forbade Jews from owning or listening to the radio, which made information hard to come by. After being uprooted from their home, Alice and her family lived in a cramped ghetto with few belongings. This lasted only a few weeks before she and many others were forced on cattle cars with no clue of their destination. My father kept saying, "They're probably sending us to do work, and then we will come home," said Alice. Whether her father truly thought this or was being hopeful, Alice still doesn't know. She strongly believes that her hope and unwillingness to give up is how she survived. Unfortunately, when they arrived at Auschwitz, reality set in. My father saw what was waiting for us and thought we were all going to be killed, so he started to say a prayer," said Alice Ginsburg. "A prayer that you say before you die." What was waiting for them was the horrific sight of flaming fire and thick smoke rising out of several crematoriums. With fear and shock, Alice and her family followed the masses of people to the scrutinizing Nazi officers who sorted the imprisoned into groups based on age and gender. "We said our goodbyes and hugged and kissed, and that was the last I saw them," said Alice as she tearfully recalled leaving her mother, grandmothers, little sister, and close relatives. After being sent to barracks by Nazi soldiers, she would be forced to undress and attend roll call with other women and girls in the camp. This demeaning treatment worsened by the day, since the sole purpose of the gathering was for Nazis to decide who would be eliminated. Despite being at Auschwitz, Langenbelow, and other concentration camps, the long, infamous death march, Ginsburg's perseverance and fight to stay alive saved her. Hearing Alice describe awful monstrosities, then tell of her own hope throughout it all, is a memory I will never forget. Alice Ginsburg now lives in New York City, where she met her husband and had 3 children. Upon arriving in the States, Alice was focused on moving forward with her life and not concentrating on the trauma of her past. In 1983, Yafa Ilyich, another survivor, reached out requesting an interview with Alice so she could have an opportunity to share her story. "I find it very important to educate people so it shouldn't happen again," said Alice. Even with numerous interviews behind her, each one is as difficult to get through emotionally as the first. When my classmate from the School of the New York Times asked what advice she would give to young people today, Alice said, "Fight against hatred. For evil to flourish, it takes good men to do nothing." She longingly asked that the future generation work for justice and eliminate hate. I hope by sharing Alice Ginsburg's story that people of all ages will seek opportunities to hear first-hand accounts. New York's Museum of Jewish Heritage, a living memorial to the Holocaust, offers resources such as a recorded public program called Stories Survive. In Richmond, we're fortunate enough to have the Virginia Holocaust Museum, which always has displays of survivors' stories as well. "I'm upset about the rise of anti-Semitism," said Alice, "but I am very hopeful that we are overcoming it. It's for you to fight against hatred." Thank you.
You walked away far too fast. I might need a loan. Ladies and gentlemen, we are privileged to have Commonwealth Attorney Shannon Taylor as our keynote speaker today. She's a University of Virginia graduate with a major in international relations, and after graduation, she worked as a paralegal where a love for the law blossomed into a Juris Doctor degree from the University of Richmond. She was elected in 2011, 2015, and 2019 to the Henrico Commonwealth Attorney, and using her office as a bully pulpit to make many a scofflaw against many a scofflaw. She prosecuted a self-proclaimed KKK leader in June of 2020 for plowing his truck into a peaceful crowd of protesters, reminiscent of the Heather Heyer murder in Charlottesville just in 2017, 3 years earlier. If you're not outraged, you're not paying attention. She vowed to prosecute to the fullest extent of the law, and mercifully no one was killed. The scoundrel was found guilty and received a 6-year sentence. Please help me welcome the Honorable Shannon Taylor, Esquire.
Good afternoon, everyone. First, let me say thank you to the Jewish Community Federation and to thank you for Alex for allowing me to step in. I know there was supposed to be another Abigail here, but I can assure you she'd be very impressed with the Abigail that we heard from today, whose parents I know both know well, and I'm very pleased to see you all here, dear, and congratulations. I read your piece when it was published in the Richmond Times-Dispatch. I should also mention that Esther Windmuller was a very dear friend of mine as well, as we practice criminal law here in the metro area, and I know there's lots of friends out here today. But I will say this is truly an honor, a privilege, and part of my responsibility to be part of this event, and part of ensuring that anything like the Holocaust never again comes to fruition. You know, when Holocaust Remembrance Day began, it was solemn and special because of the survivors. We owed them our respect, our appreciation, and the promise to them that we would do whatever it takes to make sure that this could not occur again. We saw them with us, with their physical scars, with the psychic wounds. We admire the way they pulled their lives together and went on, and many of them to raise families and contribute to the communities. But we saw the pain in their eyes, the pain of lost loved ones, of vanished communities, of the indifference of neighbors and governments, and we told them, never again. But now, most of them are gone. Of course, we are very, very proud to have some of them here with us today. And the responsibility falls to us. And if anything, it's more difficult, because without having survivors, we won't have that living evidence. We won't be able to look at someone and see and hear the horrific stories. The tales survivors told were almost implausible, and when they told them, but now even secondhand, it can be further away and harder to describe. But that does not make our responsibility any less. It makes it even more. Now the burden is on us, and we sit here in our privileged lives in our communities where many of us have hardly suffered, nothing compared to the Holocaust. We need to tell those stories and make sure that the future generations also shoulder that burden. We owe it to the victims. We owe it to our children, no less. Unfortunately, we don't have to look very far to see how quickly and easily anti-Semitism rears its ugly head. Just down the road in my hometown of Charlottesville, I watched horrified as men marched on the lawn of the storied University of Virginia chanting, "Jews will not replace us." I can only imagine what went through the minds of elderly survivors as they saw those horrific scenes on TV and through the minds of Jewish families around this country. Or through the minds of the children who lived in Charlottesville or in Virginia or anywhere in America. They looked and they realized maybe they were not safe. And as they turned to their parents for hugs and reassurance, those parents, they too, remembered the Holocaust. And they also know that the parents in Europe reassured their children, but all in vain and to no avail. So while families hugged and reassured each other, we were reminded that never is a solemn vow and a rallying cry, but we must do more than that. More recently, on January 6th, as rioters stormed the U.S. Capitol, we once again saw anti-Semitism as rioters were photographed wearing shirts with the memes that meant 6 million is not enough. Horrific as that is, it serves as a reminder that murderous anti-Semitism still stalks our country and endangers Jews right here. We must stand up again and again, whenever and wherever we see anti-Semitism. We have a responsibility to make sure to honor the memory of the victims, the survivors, the Allied soldiers who sacrificed their lives so heinous bigotry would not prevail. We must ensure that our children learn about the Holocaust. We must, as Americans, be willing to acknowledge the errors so that we can learn from them. We must teach how easy it is to lose sight of another's humanity. It starts with broken windows, expulsions from schools and jobs, graduates to yellow stars and separated spaces, and concludes in gas chambers and killing fields. It happened before. It can happen again. And unfortunately, we do see it around us. We see the symptoms of bigotry and ignorance and hatred. Just as Alex had described right here in Henrico, I had been confronted with that bigotry and intolerance. When folks, black, white, communities together, demonstrated against the murder of George Floyd, an avowed Ku Klux Klansman drove his truck into the crowd. And as you heard earlier, thankfully, no one was hurt. But that bigotry was still on display, using his willingness of using force to injure or kill people he felt who were inferior. And just a few weeks ago, Henrico County residents woke up to KKK flyers in their mailboxes, in their driveways, inviting them to join a group that wants a society absent of African Americans and Jews. They don't sugarcoat it. They extol the Nazis and praise Hitler and want an opportunity to take up where Nazis left off. As Henrico County's Commonwealth Attorney, I'm fortunate to be in the position to act decisively to counter this hatred. I will not stand by and allow this in my community, in our community. I will prosecute, but I will also educate. The Henrico Klansman who attacked the protesters is in jail, as you've heard. But a few years ago, when we had students who wrote anti-Semitic graffiti on other people's property, I insisted that they do community service, to read learned text, become educated of the evils of anti-Semitism and its murderous consequences, and I pray to this day that they have learned. We must do both. We must stop anti-Semitism again, whenever, wherever we see it, but again, must educate. We must stand up for what's right. As Elie Wiesel said, we must take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented. Sometimes we must interfere when human lives are endangered, when human dignity is in jeopardy. National borders and sensitivities become irrelevant. Wherever men and women are persecuted because of their race, religion, or political views, that place at that moment becomes the center of the universe. And that is on us, to teach the evils of anti-Semitism, to teach how it can sneak up, to teach and understand that even a simple verbal slur today, a common stereotype remark, an off-color joke, a meme directed at a Jewish politician, that all of that can grow until we are murdering innocent people again. But here in the United States, as we are vigilant against anti-Semitism, we need to remember that hatred and bigotry directed against any group can morph to bigotry against another group, and that we are strongest when we stand together, whether it is racism or Islamophobia or homophobia or prejudice against immigrants or people of Asian descent or anyone who is looks different, worships differently, speaks differently. All of those are symptoms of the same bigotry that slaughtered Jews not even 100 years ago. But we are strongest as we stand together. So some of that education is educating our children to stand up for their neighbor, to not ignore prejudice no matter who it is aimed at, to remember that what is directed at one person could also be directed at you. And for those of us in the justice system, we need to stand strong and not ignore hatred. Last year when I went to the General Assembly, I was working with my friends Delegate Dolores McQuinn and Senator Ghazala Hashmi to strengthen our hate crime laws, to make sure that here in Virginia our laws do protect all communities and make it crystal clear that hate has no home here. We didn't succeed last year, but that just means I will redouble my efforts and fight harder, because that is my responsibility. I will continue to go into our schools, talk about prejudice and bullying, and talk about how we must treat our fellow human beings and our commonalities and the beauty of our differences. That, I promise you, I'm here for all of you. That we may never let hate flourish unanswered and unopposed, and I promise you that I won't. Thank you so much for letting me speak here today.
That's food for thought a long time. Thank you so much. So would you put this on Roger's shoulders, please? Thank you so much, Shannon. I want you to mark well the young people here today. The Rutland Torah Academy students will be lighting the candles. There's be one candle lit for each of the 6 millions of victims that were murdered. Abby, our young people at the Rutland Torah Academy, there is hope for our future. All we see is negative stuff on the TV constantly, when we should look at the bright side. Look at the light at the end of the tunnel. The light at the end of the tunnel are the young people that you see here today. Bravo for them, and thank you so much, all of you. While they are lighting that, because we're running a little bit late and it's quite chilly, we're going to go ahead and ask Cantor Sarah Beck-Berman to come forward. She's going to be doing El Mole Rachamim and then Kaddish for 6 million. In Hasidic Judaism, it is said that to reach God, no words will suffice. There are 10 levels of prayer, and above those 10 levels of prayer is music. To sing this hauntingly beautiful prayer is the unequaled cantor from Beth Ahava Synagogue, one of the oldest synagogues in America. Beth Ahava is only 13 years younger than our republic. The prayer originated in the Jewish communities of Western and Eastern Europe, and since the end of the Holocaust, it has been adapted as a memorial prayer for the victims of the Holocaust and Nazi persecution. All rise. Please remain standing afterwards for the Kaddish as well. There is no one, and I repeat, no one that I've ever heard do El Rachamim better than Cantor Beck-Berman.
First in English. God filled with compassion, justice of widows and parent of orphans, please do not be silent and hold your peace for the blood of Israel that was shed like water. Grant infinite rest on the wings of your sheltering presence among the holy and pure, shining and radiating light like the first light of creation, to the souls of the millions of Jews, adults and children, who were murdered, slaughtered, burned, strangled, and buried alive. All of them holy and pure in your eyes, may they rest in paradise. Therefore, Master of compassion, shelter them in the comfort of your wings forever. May their souls be woven into the tapestry of life eternal, with you as their comfort. May they rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. Il male rachamim, dayan almanot v'avitomim, al nor תחשב ותתאפק לדם ישראל שנשפך כמים. המצא מנוחה נכונה על כנפי השכינה, במעלות קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע מאירים ומזהירים לנשמותיהם של רבבות אלפי ישראל, אנשים ונשים, ילדים וילדות, שנהרגו ונשחטו ונשרפו ונחנקו ונקברו חיים. כולם קדושים וטהורים, ובגן עדן תהא מנוחתם. לכן בעל הרחמים יסתירם בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתם. אדוני הוא נחלתם, וינוחו בשלום ושלום על משכבם. ונאמר, and let us say, Amen. Kaddish Yatom, Mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, ve'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon uvyomechon ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב, ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך לעלם ולעלמי עלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי דקודשה בריחו לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דאמירן בעלמה ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל, ואמרו אמן.
I don't think I'm the only one that was weepy-eyed during Emolei Rachamim. You all may be seated. I'm going to ask Rabbi David Asher to return to the lectern and lead us in a prayer for our wonderful armed forces who look after us 24/7, 365, and for Chuck Talley's Legionnaires who are the color guard here today, looking after us today as well, and for the Israeli Defense Forces, which looks after our people in the land of our fathers each and every day, and we pray they do so forevermore. Rabbi.
Before I begin the prayer, I just want to mention the names of my immediate family who were directly killed by the Nazis. My maternal great-grandfather, Isaac Rothschild, my maternal great-grandmother, Sarah Traub Rothschild, and my maternal great-aunt, Della Rothschild. May their memories be a blessing. Almighty God on high, omnipotent, sovereign, bless the valiant soldiers of the American military forces and the Israel Defense Forces who risk their lives to protect the welfare of all your creation. Benevolent God, be their shelter and fortress. Do not allow them to falter. May harmony dwell in their ranks, victory in their battalions. Fill their hearts with faith and courage. Protect them on land, in the air, and in the sea. Guide them in peace. Lead them toward peace. Return them speedily to their families, alive and unharmed. As it is written, God will shield you from all evil. God will guard your soul. God will safeguard your departure and arrival from now and forevermore. Grant us true peace in fulfillment of the prophecy. Nation shall not lift up sword against another nation, nor shall they learn war anymore. Let all the inhabitants of the world know that dominion is yours, and your name inspires awe upon all that you have created. May this be your will, and let us say, Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you have ever doubted sometimes legitimate criticism of Israel is used as a cover for anti-Semitism, then mark the implication of the words of President Erdogan of Turkey, who boldly feels free to publicly say, "This is in the nature. They are just only satisfied by sucking your blood." What? I thought this animus was a quest for land, but land is often only used as a guise for the oldest hate of all, the ancient blood libel towards all Jews. We Jews must practice what our Ahmadiyya Muslim brothers and sisters preach loud and clear and often: love for all, hatred for none. Let him, Erdogan, and others of his ilk scream into empty barrels, and while we build a tall and bold structure of strength, security, and love. Why were daffodils chosen for this remembrance project that I mentioned earlier? Look at the bottom of your programs. What you're going to see there is the Magen David star that we Jews were forced to wear during the Holocaust. My father was a partisan. Someone once asked me at the end of a lecture, "Did your father wear a star?" He would have told them to put that star someplace where the sunshine never gets to. He never wore the star. But look at the bottom of the program. You'll see how similar these lovely flowers with their 6 petals are to the Magen David that we Jews were required to wear. As we plant these bulbs for our children, we pray that they will survive and that our children will continue to pay homage to those 1.5 million that did not survive. It is known that Holocaust education does mitigate anti-Semitism, and today is but one day of Holocaust teaching. We hope to have touched a few hundred lives with today's discussion. It's a start, but not enough. It is these discussions that will keep the memory alive, past the lives of today's remaining fragile survivors, myself included. We need hundreds, nay thousands of these discussions everywhere to keep anti-Semitism in check, and through thought-provoking analysis and open discussions of the Holocaust and its teachings. Do we have a catalyst today to make a snowball of thought roll into an avalanche of ideas and words? The answer is yes. It is a play called The Soap Myth. If I tell you the Soap Myth is on Broadway and has been awarded 3 Tonys, one for its star, Academy Award winner Richard Dreyfuss, one for the play itself, and one for the brilliant playwright Jeff Cohen, I would not be telling you a lie. I would be merely telling you the truth ahead of time. Watch, listen, and wait for it. Then let the endless myriad of discussions begin as the Soap Myth grows legs and travels throughout America and worldwide, combating anti-Semitism in broad strokes everywhere. Daniel Borstein, historian and librarian of Congress, said, "Trying to plan for the future without a sense of the past is like planting cut flowers." Today we remember and tell the story of the past and pay homage to our loved ones with tears and voices raised on high. Zokor, remember. Zokor, remember. Zokor. Plan for and pray for the best possible future for all the children of our planet. Ladies and gentlemen, our gardener and his 2 helpers, who have not yet fully grown physically but emotionally, are with us today, are going to help you plant the bulbs. We have bulbs for you to take to the memorial wall, and we have a special place where you put the bulb pointy side up. Wes and his terrific boys, Lynn and Sebastian, will help and guide you with this. Also, in this tradition of our people, so grab a stone already and place it on the memorial so that all who pass will know that someone visited, remembered, and loved our martyrs. With Tikkun Olam, we will heal the world. One tulip bulb, one stone, one selfless act at a time, because we have love for all and hatred for none. Thank you all. It's a cold day. Please energize yourself. Get up from your chairs, grab a stone, grab a bulb, and proceed with our gardeners. They'll tell you what to do.
Are you ready to go? We're gonna,
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Stevie, hey, good to see you.
Anywhere down the
Oh, sorry. Where are they doing that? Oh.
We've got four areas. Not much.
Amazing. I've heard her speak, but not on this topic. She's very good. Where's that young lady who did this? Who is that?
I think she made
There's spaces all the way down. Yeah, if it's anywhere in pointy side up.
This is as deep as you have to dig it, right?
Yeah. We're going to back tunnel.
Thank you guys for organizing this.
It'll be so pretty and spread.
It will, yeah.
So I'll move down.
Yeah, it's got them all the way across the front.
Bye.
What a great job.
Oh, they got it dug out for you. That's good.
Oh, that's wonderful.
I didn't bring a shovel with me, or spade in this case.
Very nice.
I don't think there's any left for there.
Can we put them
Probably
in
more
between?
down.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, because, yeah. They'll fit pretty
One
tight.
in between.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. No, that'll be all right. And there's
Spread them out.
תחשב תדפק לדם ונשפוך כמים